Hey friends, it's been a while. Uh, been busy. Had another had another baby in the early days of child rearing. We've had a run of bad luck, as it were. Um, our heater went out, our furnace, uh, first for a night, and we thought it would be fixed the next day, which it was. The mechanic came in and brought in a new thermocoupler, and that fixed things for a few days. But then in the middle of the night, a few days later, the heat stopped working again with the same symptom, which is basically the heat number was lower than the setting, and it said heat on, which means the thermostat, like this thermostat. This is my office, but thermostats are the same. Was working, but it wasn't triggering the flame to start the fire. And turns out our whole furnace was ready to be destroyed. And so the mechanic brought some space heaters and warmed things up for us, and took a few days to repair it. And so that was stressful. Then we had scary incidents with both of our sons. Seemed like for a moment there, in each situation, they're not related, that they wouldn't make it. It was very scary in both cases. But luckily, they are both fine, and we're all doing fine. And the heat is back on. We have a new furnace, a new water heater. They work. It's interesting. They do work a little bit differently. I can tell that our hot water is not quite as hot as it was before, and it doesn't heat up quite as fast as it did before. But eventually, it gets back on. Our old heat was very hot, and the sound of the fan is much quieter, which is actually good, and it just sounds different when it starts. So it's interesting that the mechanism, the physiology, if you were, of the house has changed with the anatomy, which is interesting. But I know it's been a while since I posted anything on here, and in the past I've really just been reading things with commentary, and I think that's probably boring because I don't have a good reading voice. Probably, I mean, maybe there's people out there who are like really like it. I don't know, but in general, I think that you can listen to an audiobook or something. Someone that's good at reading books instead of listening to me. And the main reason I did it is primarily just to like read it myself out loud and have commentary and stuff. So I know like on the channel there's like 2 Pusong Ling readings and then like 1 incomplete Freud reading, which I'll probably never finish. But I did want to start like giving my thoughts on here, like just kind of I'm just like plagued by thoughts of random things, a lot of which doesn't relate to my research or my dissertation. And so I just wanted to maybe start uploading some videos. I don't know if I'll make these like open for everybody, or if I'll just share the link with certain people, that are my friends. But the main thought I had today is on Spinoza, who, interestingly, so this is the Ethics, Spinoza's Ethics, which is the first of his 2 really classic works. I'm sure that Spinoza experts think that all of his work is important, but there's 2 in particular that people talk about: the Ethics and then his treatise on politics and theology. So I've never read Spinoza, vaguely aware of his thinking through secondary literature on other people who are influenced by Spinoza, like Hegel. And so like I've been reading Charles Taylor's book, Hegel, which is amazing. And he mentions Spinoza briefly as kind of a part of the train of thought leading up to Hegel. But started reading the Ethics, quite difficult work, very rigorously laid out in a series of definitions, axioms, and propositions. So it's not a flowing work. It's more logical in the sense of like proofs and things like that. But the interesting part is pretty clear to me. I mean, it's not as hard as Hegel so far. It's slow reading, but not impossible. Not impossible reading. Though I do recall probably in 2013 or 2014 at the latest, when I was going to community college and taking philosophy classes, my professor, Dr. Brandon, it must have been I would guess it was 2013 because I think it was the first year that I was back in classes. We would have conversations and he'd say, you seem very interested in origins. Like, what is the origin of things? What is the beginning of things? You should read Spinoza. And he gave me one work of Spinoza. I don't know if it was the Ethics or the Treatise. I don't recall. In my mind, I thought it was the Treatise, but it very well may have been the Ethics. But it was, if the Treatise is also laid out like with a series of definitions and propositions, it could have been that one. But this one definitely is. And I remember reading like a page and saying, this is like way beyond what I can comprehend. And it's really been a long journey for me to get to a place where I understand this kind of thinking. And just as a segue, I remember probably the same year, 2013, maybe it was probably the summer of 2013. Yeah, it had to have been because I moved out of the halfway house in the summer of 2013, and I was working around that time at a gas station outside of Walmart, one of those like little come up to the convenience store, buy some cigarettes, that kind of gas station, not a convenience store per se. And I was reading Jung. I was actually reading this exact book, this exact copy, Archetypes in the Collective Unconscious, and I was thinking this is the absolute limit of my intellectual capability. It's like understanding this right now. And I think after it's been over 10 years since that time, my comprehension has definitely gotten much better. But there's still things that you come up against, like Hegel, and you think, wow, like, am I ever going to be smart like the greats of the world, like the Hegels? And I think if you really want to know things, if you really have a thirst for knowledge, those are the people you should be comparing yourself against rather than normal people. But I think I can understand Spinoza now, and that's basically the point I'm saying. Like after 10 years, I can read him, and it's difficult, but I get it. And he's actually helping me understand some things that were puzzling about Hegel. For example, Spinoza has this phrase, in itself, either in itself or in another, I guess. I can look up the exact phrase because luckily there's a kind of a terminology list at the beginning that the translator put, which is very helpful. Well, I'm not seeing it. Yeah, okay, so yeah, I'm right. So to be in oneself or to be in something else. Hegel uses similar words. He's like being in itself, being for itself, and being in and for itself, something like that. Like that's the stages of the dialectic. Like, wow, maybe this is kind of what Hegel is talking about. At least it's something like that. And basically, what Spinoza means is it's quite clear. If something is in itself, it is caused by itself alone. Like it basically has no cause, really. It's a thing that has no prior cause. Whereas if you're in something else, you are made of something else, or you've been caused by something else. So human beings are all in something else because we were caused, of course, by our parents, but then by natural selection, by chemical reactions, by the ultimately by the material that we're made of, by the universe. And so Spinoza basically says that he's talking about substances, and earlier in the Ethics he makes it sound like there can be many substances. The only rule is that they're not of the same attribute, because if they're of the same attribute, they would have to have one of the other would have to have either cause the other, or they have a cause prior to them, which would by definition make them not substances, because substances are in themselves in the way that I just said. But then he kind of goes on to say, well, there must only be one substance, even though logically at first we can say maybe there's more, as long as they don't contradict this rule. But then ultimately there should just be one substance, which kind of makes sense. Like the universe is, if it's at a singularity, like the Big Bang, there's like a singularity at the beginning of time that explodes into the multitude of everything in the universe that we see and know, stars, planets, all of life that has emerged on Earth. They can be dated back to that one initial substance. Now, contemporary physics, which I don't know really anything about, which I should at some point, I can see them saying, well, yeah, it's a combination of the material and then the forces, so maybe there's two substances. But if you think about substance as the matter that everything's made of, maybe there's just one ultimately, that kind of, there's different modes. And so there's the substance, which is the stuff that everything's made of, okay? And it's expressed through different modes, which are appearances. And so this cup is a mode of the substance. I'm a mode of the substance. We're made of the same thing, but we are manifesting in unique ways. So there's an appearance of differentiation, an appearance of being different, of being separate, and in a way we're different modes. But ultimately, we come from the same source, the same substance. Okay. This is very similar actually to some Hindu theology or philosophy, which I was reading as well. I've been reading Shaktism or Tantra, Hindu Tantra. And I believe that this is a belief in mainstream Hinduism as well, that everything is just Brahman, and Brahman is like the total being, all being. But in Tantrism, I think it goes even farther in quite a Hegelian way, predating Hegel by quite a long way, or a significant amount of time, in the sense that it doesn't reject physical being as an illusion. So mainstream Hinduism, as far as I know, seems to be what I've read as illusionist, saying this that we see around us is Maya, okay, an illusion, a delusion, and it's only the spiritual that's real. What Tantra does is basically say, yes, everything is one, ultimately, in the same way that mainstream Hinduism would say, like in the Bhagavad Gita. But that needn't mean that we reject the material world. The material world is real too. It's just a different mode, in Spinoza's sense, a different expression of Brahman. And I like that, because you're basically not rejecting, you're not turning away from the material side of things. And I think it's actually more complete, because so-called illusion is included in the whole. Okay, so that's Tantra. I like that. Hegel says something basically similar. And I would say Western thought leading up to Hegel and beyond Hegel has been basically a attempting to do that. Like, how do we not reject anything? How do you say yes to everything at the same time? And so, like Nietzsche said, you had to first you say no. Okay, you say a no saying to like false beliefs, but then you had to start saying yes. And one interpretation would say he's just saying you had to make your own meaning, that's valid enough. But from a metaphysical level, perhaps you're saying yes to everything. Good and evil are both necessary. How do you not reject anything? And it's difficult to get there. And honestly, a lot of people go crazy trying to get there. Like Lyotard, libidinal economy. Well, let's hope my books don't all fall down right now. Pretty close. Put these all back. Okay, well, let's hope nothing bad happens. But libidinal economy is basically like the end of trying to get there, I think. And he's basically going crazy. You're going crazy. Is it possible to put all contradictions together? Because the basic hang-up is critique. To critique something. To say yes to this and no to something else. You're taking infinity, the infinity of everything, and you're folding it, is what Lyotard says. You're folding it. And to not critique would be to have the band, the infinite band, the libidinal band as he calls it, be completely flat. Of course, it's not flat because everything's on it. It's like messy, but like not folded. Flat in the sense of not folded. But the hang-up is, by doing that, by saying yes, you're saying no to saying no. By saying no, you're saying no to saying yes. Okay. How do you include critique in everything? Okay, you see the hang-up. So Lyotard's ultimate statement is be inside the fold, be inside the critique, and forget. Be inside but forget. So the only way to solve the contradictions is to forget, to not think about it anymore, which is similar to Tantra. In Tantra, you're meditating and you become one with Brahman through meditation. And so in a way, you are like, forgetting, not focusing, not using your reason. So how do you solve it? I don't know how to solve it, actually, but my dissertation work is trying to solve the physical side, the material side, but the ideal side, the idealistic side, the rationalistic, the internal mental cognitive side is a trickier problem, and I'm probably not the one that's going to solve it, but I think I'm getting pretty close with the material side, and so we'll see. So let's go back and see where we were. All of Western philosophy, all of Tantra, Hinduism, the difference between mainstream Hinduism and Tantra. Tantra is basically saying yes to the material world. So Hegel says the same thing, I guess, is the last point on this. The idea of absolute idealism, which is what Hegel's ontology, I guess, is called, is basically saying, like, you have your thoughts, your internal world, and they are embodied They are made material by expression, whether through speech acts or through actions or through art, through the will. And it's only when that embodiment happens that you have the absolute idea. So the idea, capital I, is not what we would think like in your head, the idea, like I have an idea. The idea is a concept in your head plus existence, plus the raw matter together. Then you have the real idea. So absolute idealism is basically saying, is solving that gap between idealism and materialism. Okay. So let's get back to Spinoza. Spinoza, and the reason we got to Hegel is because he's saying in yourself or in something else. In yourself or in something else. So there's only one substance. And then there's different modes of being. And again, with Tantra, it's the same. We are all part of the God, the ultimate, the being. The God differs. In Shaktism, it's the Great Mother. In more mainstream Hinduism, it's Vishnu or the other guy. I can't think of his name. I think who's the Bhagavad Gita? Let me double check. I have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. I would be remiss if I didn't just figure that out real quick. It's one of those weird, like, forgetful moments because it's like such a common name. That's just types of Hinduism. Vishnu, Shiva. Yeah, that's the other one. Shiva and Vishnu. And those two forms of Hinduism are by far the most common. But Shaktism is number 3 in the list. But if you look at like how many people are Shaktists, or whatever the correct conjugation would be, very small compared to the other two. So yes, it is the 3rd largest, but it's like there's a big drop between the Vishnu worshippers and the Shiva worshippers, and then the Shakti. But like I said, Shaktism is really interesting because it does not reject the material world, and I think that's interesting because you almost would need a woman. You would need the feminine to do that. Because remember, there's like the public and private divide. The private is like this higher realm for men, where it's like great men are like doing intellectual things, and it's like the home, the domestic side is like the feminine. But why reject the feminine? Why reject the domestic, the mundane? So I've always, a big part of my intellectual mission is to bring the domestic back into the state, to unify the so-called feminine and the so-called masculine. Of course, I'm not saying that women belong in the domestic. I understand the critique of that, but the realm itself is rejected. Even certain forms of feminism do that. You say, why should we be in the kitchen? Why should we not be leaders? But to say that is rejecting the realm of the domestic. And so Shaktism, I like it because it doesn't reject the domestic of the universe, which is matter, material. Like a big thing now is like we're talking about female desire in movies and stuff. Desire must be held on to, not rejected as well. So the realm of desire, the realm of emotion, the realm of the visceral is not rejected in favor of the cerebral, the spiritual, the intellectual, etc. At the same time, you're not rejecting that realm either. But that realm tends to be protected more than the other. Okay? All right, so that's what Tantra does. Tantra is saying we are different modes of the goddess. And it is only an illusion that we are separate. But at the same time, there's something fundamentally real about that. We're both separate and unified. And you accept both of those things, of course, through meditation, through the Kundalini meditation, Kundalini yoga. You would overcome that, and you would be one with, basically you realize you're the goddess. Okay, you're the goddess, but so is everyone else. It's not like an ego trip or something. Everyone's the goddess. So for Spinoza, the goddess, of course he would use the term God, is the substance. The substance, which is the one and only substance, the one and only thing that has no cause but itself. It is in itself and has expressions, modes. Everything else is a mode of the substance. There is no other substance. Everything else is just a mode. Everything else is finite, but the substance is infinite. What's interesting is that, there's this movie out called The Substance, which I watched over the summer or the fall, I guess, but it was pretty hot, so it felt like the summer. And on its face, the substance is this medicine that they take to split. But they split. You have yourself and then the younger version of you, or like this ideal version of you. It wasn't clear that it was supposed to be like an exact, that was what Demi Moore's character looked like when she was younger. It almost seemed like it's like a new you that's younger. But they keep saying, you are you. You are one. And so I'm not sure if there was a direct inspiration from Spinoza in this. I mean, the term substance, that's the word. That is the word that this English translation uses. It's like this substance. And, it's a Latin word. He wrote in Latin. But the Latin word is, pretty similar anyway. So I'm sure the French translation basically sounds the same, too. Substantia. Or substantia. I don't know how you would pronounce it, but it's substance. And so, did the director intentionally reference Spinoza? Had she read him and then unconsciously expressed it? Or is it just coincidence? How cool is that? Or how weird would that be? But basically, there's a substance. You are the substance in this case. You split into two modes. That's weird. I did not do that on purpose. Ooh, yeah. You have two modes. See if it happens again. Yay! You have two modes. The older version of you and the younger version of you. Wow, I just knew it would do something. Rock and roll! Okay. What if I did devil horns? Liberal tolerance. What happened? Two modes, younger you and older you, but you're one. So the substance is you, and then the other two are modes. Doesn't go much deeper than that. Honestly, that's the end of my thoughts on it. But I would just be curious to know, people who are philosophy majors who are reading Spinoza, did you think of it immediately? Am I the first one to think of this connection? Is the connection real? Or is it just in my mind? And is there a difference? Synchronicity. So that's the end. This went longer than I expected. I was just going to talk about this substance movie connection, but then, I felt like I needed to explain myself, get all of this out of me. What have my thoughts been lately? Hegel, Freud, Tantra, Spinoza. Babies, poop, changing poops. If you haven't done it, you don't know what you're missing. Smell it. Smell it. Smell the poop. Yeah. Woo. But that's it. I wonder which other ones I don't know about. Like bunny ears. What about heart? I knew it. I knew there'd be something. That's not really a good heart. Let me see. From me to you, signing out. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I see. So, peace sign, one hand, balloons. 2, Richard Nixon, confetti. Do, 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 do. What about pledging allegiance? Will the American flag come up? What about this? Come on. All right, that's it for now. If I have other thoughts, I'll let you know. Good to talk to you. If you watched to the end, signing out. See you later.